So, we're very
Yeah, I'm here. Hello. Uh, I don't mind. I don't mind.
And let me do that so folks can hear on WPFW. I always forget to do that. But I'm glad that you're here, Rafiki, because this is I don't know how to describe this moment. So I think I want you to give us an overview, a synopsis, whatever, on how does this moment in history feel to you? You've been a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. You're actually on the involved with the Central Committee, correct? You've been
Yes,
on
that's
the coordinating committee on the Black Alliance for Peace for quite some time. Um, how, with all of your years of organizing, how does this moment feel to you? Because for me, it feels a little different. It feels a little more agitated and maybe even a little more hopeful in some ways than previous challenges we've had. But I also realize that I haven't been in this for as long as a lot of people have. So I'm always wondering, are my feelings in check with the actual history that our revolutionaries have lived?
um well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me here. Um I really always appreciate the work you and Sean have done, whether you're here on WPFW or in some of your previous iterations. Actually, y'all don't notice, but some of your presentations was part of what led us to BAP, to the Black Alliance for Peace, along with the Black Agenda report. So um, we really see the value of this alternative media, and we know PFW for a very long time and the work that it has done. So I just wanted to say up front, that I'm appreciative for being here, and I'm glad to offer any understandings that I might have to your audience and to you all. Um, you know that I have this thing about words, Jackie,
I know. That's why I say the ones I do to you when we're
and
interviewing.
our people, I find, use words very loosely. So when you ask about a historical moment, I first have to kind of dig in on what does this mean, history?
Mm-hmm.
Because especially since now they call this Black History Month, and we have all kind of people who are claiming to be experts in our history. Some people say our history goes back to colonialism. Some people say our history goes back to slavery. Some people say our history goes back to the West African civilizations. Others say our history goes back to Egypt.
Mm.
And to be honest, I find that all of these perspectives on history are tainted by the interests of the people who put them forward.
Mm.
People
Mm-hmm.
talk about history in a way that suits their own agendas. People write history primarily for the aggrandizement of the rulers. And then the next set comes who would like to be in the good graces of the rulers, and they write history. So we need to take some time and understand our history for ourselves. I tell people all the time, don't take my word for what I'm saying. Check it out for yourself. Find out for yourself. Know for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. That's what Malcolm told us, right? Find out for yourself, know for yourself, so you can think for yourself. Once you can think for yourself, you can do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is the kind of message we need to be sharing on this so-called Black History Month. So now, having said all of that,
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
um, this is a unique historical moment for a number of reasons. Um, it is really unlike any moment I've seen in my lifetime. And I'm hesitant to jump out there, but I'm venturing to say this is a moment unlike anything that we have ever seen as a people in our history. Going back past Egypt, um, it looks as if, it feels as if, it smells as if imperialism and capitalism in all its manifest forms is under extreme pressure and is likely, at least in some respects, to collapse in the very near future. When we look at capitalism and imperialism and we look at what they're doing on the continent of Africa, and you asked me about West Africa because of the specific things that are happening in West Africa,
Right.
but it's really a question of the entire continent
Mhm.
and by extrapolation in the entire world.
Mm.
But we could start at West Africa and then move step by step to see the connections to what's happening in the world. Um, in West Africa, there's one nation state that got its independence as a result of an armed struggle. That nation is Guinea-Bissau.
Mhm.
And that armed struggle was led by the indomitable Amilcar Cabral.
Mhm.
Um, the rest of West Africa has gone through various kinds of action aimed at gaining some measure of independence. And I use these words to be as precise as possible because independence has layers and levels and different forms that it takes. Um, on the one hand, you have the general movement for national liberation that took place for the most part from the end of the 40s up through the 60s, where African countries, especially those below the Sahara Desert, were fighting to get their independence. And that whole process was really led by revolutionary forces. So you had Ghana and Kwame Nkrumah in 1957 getting their independence. You had the historical vote by the Guinea, the People's Revolutionary Republic of Guinea, who voted no in the French referendum, which asked them, do you want to be a part of France? And they voted, hell no, we're African.
Right.
Um, and that was a really significant thing. In fact, it was an act of violence. If you French, right? The French reacted violently. They took
Mhm.
everything out of Guinea, including the toilet paper and the light bulbs, what you call it, the file cabinets, the
Right.
toilet seats, the vehicles that were there that they couldn't take out, they blew them up. So voting no by Guinea in 1958 was an act of revolutionary violence, and it set the tone for the national liberation movements that will come. We then went through a phase where a whole lot of countries, 1960, I think it was like 38, 39 countries got their independence. And
Mhm.
later we found out that this independence wasn't real. It was
Flag independence, pretty much.
they didn't even have good flags. You know what I mean? Shit. They didn't have a good flag. There's nothing original about the flags, nothing. It was a movement of the African, really petty bourgeoisie
Mm.
into the seats that had been occupied by the colonialists. So these Africans, for the most part, fought for independence to take the place of their colonizers.
Mm-hmm.
Simultaneously with that, you had a civil rights movement that eventually emerged into a Black Power movement. You had this Pan-Africanist movement that was continuing to gather momentum and was under a ruthless attack by the CIA and the FBI. And we all know about COINTELPRO,
Mm-hmm.
but we think they were just spying on people's bedrooms. But COINTELPRO was really about identifying revolutionary forces among African people around the world and eliminating them. So
Mm-hmm.
COINTELPRO was responsible for the death of Malcolm X. COINTELPRO was responsible for the death of Patrice Lumumba. COINTELPRO was responsible for the death of Martin Luther King. COINTELPRO was responsible for overthrowing African countries throughout the continent. COINTELPRO was responsible for suppressing the revolutionary and progressive forces in the United States. And in a consequence of that, promoting the liberal so-called leaders into the Democratic Party, where they've been ever since.
So that's how they got there.
And that's how they got there. Because prior to the 60s, the Democratic Party was the party of the South.
Absolutely. That's right.
People
That's where
don't,
Dixie,
people
people
don't
don't
know
know
it.
where the term
That's right.
Dixiecrat comes from.
Dixiecrat come from. That's right. They even got a George Wallace University.
Yes, they do.
So, and they're proud of it. And they keep it up there because he's a Democrat. If he was a Republican, they would have changed the name.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying all this to say that the African struggle for liberation and self-determination, for a better economic control of our own resources in our lives, that this struggle has taken many forms. We have, in fact, tried just about everything that we could to get our independence. And through a process of really elimination, we've arrived at a couple of things that look like they might work, things that we might do at this time that our foreparents didn't have an opportunity to attempt. Three of those things are very unique. And that is military people who are committed to the interest of the people and who take their military prowess and overthrow reactionary governments.
Mm-hmm.
This has happened over the last several years in West Africa, particularly in the countries of Guinea-Bissau, I'm sorry, Burkina Faso,
Mm-hmm.
Mali, and Niger. There have been other coups d'etats during this period. There was a coup d'etat in Gabon, there's a coup d'etat in Guinea, but they weren't of the same nature.
Mm-hmm.
These three, I want to be careful with what I say.
Because you know
At
where I'm
least,
going next.
yeah, at least two of these three entered into this thing with a Pan-Africanist agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Burkina Faso
Mm-hmm.
and its President Traore, from its beginning, stated
Mm-hmm.
that they are Pan-Africanists and looking to develop that nation in the interest of its people and in the interest of Africans everywhere. They said the French got to go, and step by step, we're getting all these foreign military forces out of here
Mm-hmm.
because they claim to be coming here to get rid of jihadists, but the jihadists only seem to increase their activity with the increased presence of these external forces. And this is something we understand in the United States, because they claim to send them police into our community to
Mm-hmm.
get rid of the drugs.
Yep.
But it seems like the more police that come,
The
the
more
more
drugs
drugs
show up.
we have. And many of us have reached the conclusion a long time ago that the police are the real drug dealers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know anybody in our community that owns a boat capable of reaching South America and bringing the drugs in.
Mm-mm.
I don't know if we don't have no gun factories here or on the African continent. So these things are being imposed upon us by the very people who claim to be protecting us from these things. And this is the
Mm-hmm.
same thing that we see happening on the continent. So, in this period that I'm talking about, there's been 108 successful coup d'etats.
Mm-hmm.
Of that 108 successful coup d'etats, 3 of them for sure was carried out by revolutionaries. One, the first one really, was Gabel Abdul Nasser
Mm-hmm.
in the 1960s in Egypt. He's the same person who fought the 1967 war against them Zionist pigs in Israel.
That's right.
He's also the same person that brought Pan-Africanism into the Egyptian lexicon of political terms,
Mm.
whereas Pan-Arabism had been the watchword up until that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Nasser, whose niece actually married Kwame Nkrumah
Mm.
and was a founding member of the Organization of African Unity
Mm.
and a founding member of the Non-Aligned Movement, and one of the first people to actually organize people-centered. We hear a lot about people-centered and about community empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nasser was one of the ones who started that,
Wow.
and people don't understand that. And he was a military man, and he planned to overthrow that government from the time he was a private in boot camp. He was lining people up. He
Mm-hmm.
was organizing. He was putting himself in position to the point where he was the second in command of the reactionary government that he overthrew. So we understand the process. The second one was Thomas Sankara
Mm-hmm.
in Burkina Faso. No, actually, the second one was Muammar Gaddafi in Libya.
That was before. Oh, right when he
After
overthrew the.
Nasser,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And Gaddafi also did not start out as a strong Pan-Africanist force. Gaddafi started out just fighting for the interests of the people of Libya against that reactionary pig, King Idris. So, and it was over time because Gaddafi was identified as an Arab and was supposed to be almost exclusively associated with the struggle of the Palestinian people and of the struggle to being waged by Arabs. And it's only over a period of time engaged in struggle with these Arabs, seeing them failing to step up and give the proper support to the Palestinians, also recognizing that Libya is an African territory and under the increasingly unrelenting pressure of our brother Kwame Ture, who sat down with Gaddafi year after year after year, challenging his ideas, studying his work. We had to read the Green Book back in the 80s and like, what is this? And seeing the process of him maturing and emerging and developing till at the point that he died, he was the leading Pan-Africanist on the face of this earth.
Yes, he was. He was.
Who was planning to revamp the Africa's economic system, who was planning to revamp the Africa's problem with water and
Mhm.
addressing other very fundamental needs of Africans everywhere. When Gaddafi was in power and you was anywhere on the African continent and you figured out a way to get to Libya, you could go to school for free,
That's right.
all the way up through
Mhm.
postgraduate into your PhD and be whatever you wanted to be.
Mhm.
So we saw this out of Gaddafi. Now the next one, and in a lot of ways, maybe the most dynamic one, because he damn sure scared the hell out of these reactionary capitalist pigs, because they ain't even let him stay in power for 4 years. 3 years, they were done with this. This one got to go. And that was Thomas Sankara.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were like, "No, no, he can do too
No,
much."
no, no, we can't have this,
No.
you know. Now, the thing that these three have in common is that their commitment to the people's interests emerged and was deeply planted in them before they got into a position where they could pull a coup d'etat. So
Mm.
they were
Mhm.
lining up folks, they was recruiting people, they was monitoring the activities of their commanding officers, they was keeping a record on everything that they did wrong. And when it got to the point where enough is enough, they said, okay, let's pull the plug on this. And they went in there and they took over these countries. And I bring them up because those three men are the standard by which we have to judge others who try to do the same thing,
Right. Mhm.
right? And we've had others that tried it. Jerry Rollins in Ghana, but Jerry Rollins didn't meet the standard because he maintained his allegiance to these imperialists and his connections to this imperialist enterprise. He wanted us to be with him as the Pan-Africanist. He tried to call himself an Nkrumah, but
Hmm.
we wasn't going for that. And we
Mm-mm.
knew Jerry, and we said, no, you go ahead and do what you're going to do. We're going to do what we're going to do. So we know what the standard is, and we have these modern times. And in these modern times, um, these three states have emerged: Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And they have established something called the Alliance of
Right.
Sahel
Of the
States.
Sahel states, yeah.
Right. And this alliance is the unification of these three countries.
Mhm.
I mean, and that's the overall big picture. But the particulars of it are: one, first, their collective security. They have to guard themselves because the nations that were their brothers and sisters and neighbors a little while ago are their enemies today.
Mhm.
Nigeria, which is the head of the Economic Community of West African States, is threatening to invade Niger
Right. Mhm.
in the interests of imperialist control over West Africa. And it's crazy because they didn't threaten to invade Burkina Faso.
I noticed that.
And they didn't threaten to invade Mali.
I noticed that there was only Nigeria, and
It's only
why is that?
Niger.
Why is that?
One, because Niger economically sits in a strategic place. There's a stretch of land that goes from the Atlantic Ocean all the way over to the Red Sea. It's called the Sahel.
Mhm.
And a good almost half of Niger is occupying lands in the Sahel. In those lands, you have the world's richest uranium deposits. You have some of the world's richest gold deposits. You have massive amounts of land that have been uncultivated that sit in between the Sahara Desert
Mhm.
and the arable land below the Sahel. So with irrigation, this land becomes very productive. They grow in cotton, they grow in coffee. And I can tell you, you know, Africans in the United States, we know a little bit about picking cotton
A little
and
bit,
what
just a
that's
little
all
bit.
about. Just a little bit about that. So um, economically, Niger is very, very, very important. The other thing is that Niger has been just totally tied into France,
Mhm.
right? Totally tied into France to a point that its ability to defend itself has been deteriorated to almost nothing. So this is why they threatening to go into Niger and not into Mali or not into Burkina Faso. Because you
Mhm.
go in Burkina Faso, you go meet some brothers in there that know how to fight.
Uh-huh.
Now you have to understand that all of these guys was trained by the US
That's right. Or France. Yeah.
or France
Mhm.
or some other imperialist. So
Mhm.
the US know who to fight, who to go after,
And that's why they
and
hadn't
who not.
said anything.
That's right. In the Caribbean, they had this saying that says, monkeys know what tree to climb, right? So the monkey don't climb up the tree that got a jaguar sitting up in there.
Right.
You understand? He go find him another tree to climb. So this is what's going on with that.
Really quick, Rafiki,
Mhm.
202-588-9739 or 1-800-222-9739. I know you all are enjoying this lesson tonight from Rafiki Morris, but there are no pledges on this board. I know you all are just sitting there listening, happy to hear this incredible information that you know you would have to pay for any other time. So we only ask you to support us like this a few times a year. Why? Because WPFW is a listener supported station. All of the money that we have comes from you. We don't, there are no commercials that we have to pay some corporation or that they have to pay us to run, that we pay for. No, our programming and everything is brought to this station by the programmers, and the work that's done is funded by you. So please donate to Darker Than Blue tonight. We've still got the $120 gift for you. Palestine is still the issue. All Another copy of Sojourner Truth, Middle East Children's Alliance is available for 120. The thumb drive with Black History Month, a collection on it. 30 hours of audio, 4 gigabytes of data, all interviews and speeches with numerous notable figures for $180. For $75, the MP3 disc of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches, the Malcolm X 6 CD box set of various speeches for $180. Voices Who Changed the World flash drive, over 70 years of speeches and conversations with lots and lots of revolutionary luminaries. That's a flash drive for $200. And the 2 tickets for the Mid Atlantic Jazz Fest on Sunday are still available for $120, $40 to be a sustainer, $40 to be a member, I'm sorry, of WPFW, $25 to be a member of Pacifica Radio. You can space your donations out over a year, so that makes it easier for you to donate. A Cash App, $ WPFW. When you donate through Cash App, we don't immediately see those on the board. So I'm hoping y'all have loaded up the Cash App, and we'll find out that we have surpassed our goal again, like we did the first time, because that's exactly what happened. We had quite a few people donate through Cash App, and we exceeded our goal. Let's do that again tonight, and let's do that again in appreciation for the kind of content we bring here, Sean and I bring, and Darker Than Blue, that we are very grateful that we've given a platform for here on WPFW. So Rafiki, so now we understand why the United States and its allies didn't mess with Burkina Faso and Mali, and they were silent. The U.S. has been strangely silent
They
on,
had to be. They had
yeah,
to be silent
yeah. But when
because the other.
ECOWAS says, we're going to invade Nigeria, and the U.S. is like, yeah, I'm not. We're not. That's not our thing, right?
But you got to be again. You got to be careful with these people. The
Mm-hmm.
U.S. is playing what they call cat and mouse. They acting like they ain't in it, when in fact it is their interest that ECOWAS is defending when they say they're going to invade Niger.
Mm-hmm.
This thing about Niger that people don't understand is Niger has the only, and I've been studying these folks for a very long time. I was a child when we declared the FBI and the CIA as the enemies of our people.
Mm-hmm.
And the only CIA drone base that you can find on a map anywhere in the world is in Niger. And they spent some $300 million to build that drone base in Niger that has armed drones that can reach from that base to almost any part of the African continent. So the US is being quiet while the French are leaving, hoping that they can stay where they are.
Hmm.
And this so-called pending invasion from ECOWAS is really going to be the last-ditch effort to save that U.S. CIA drone base in Niger.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why you hear the U.S. being quiet. The U.S. have a law that when a state is overthrown by a coup d'etat, they fall into a certain diplomatic category, which is automatically sanctioned. Automatically.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have no automatic sanctions on Niger. It took them a long time to say, we can't keep avoiding this. They didn't even call it a coup. They made up some other term for it
Mm-hmm.
just to keep from calling it a coup. Because once you call it a coup, these laws kick in and
Yeah.
it demands that they act in a certain kind of way.
Yeah.
So you have to always look behind the man, standing behind the man,
Mm-hmm.
when you want to understand what these folks are up to. And what is probably the most significant is that all of this stuff is happening because we really didn't talk about what's happening in Guinea-Bissau, but it's some different kind of action happening there.
No, let's get into that. Yeah, because
All
we,
right,
we don't have a whole lot of time left.
I want to quickly show this environment
Oh,
because the
mhm.
whole of the West Africa is a bunch of neo-colonial puppets. That's the only way I can say it straight out. None of them are working for their own people's interests. All of them are working to fill their own pockets and to be loyal servants to Uncle Sam and his NATO friends and partners. This is what they're there for. So Macky Sall in Senegal,
Mm-hmm.
in Guinea, they have a military regime that is doing its best not to be this or that. They don't know which way the wind gonna blow. You know what I'm
And they
saying?
just waiting for the dust to settle,
They're
and
just waiting for the dust to settle, and I guess they're gonna figure out, well, we're gonna go this way, we're gonna go that way. Liberia, Ghana, um, you name it, Senegal, in the Gambia, all of these West African states are dedicated puppets of imperialism,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they thought they had it locked down until these coups started popping up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before the coups started popping up, we had a unique thing going on in Guinea-Bissau. Because as I started off by saying, that's the only country in that area that waged the armed struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Algeria waged the armed struggle, but it's really a North African state. So that's why I didn't include them in that statement.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in Guinea-Bissau, they've had like 8 coups d'etats
Wow.
since independence, plus a number of coups d'etats that was unsuccessful. They've had the leader of their revolution assassinated before they could actually assume power. So Amilcar Cabral was killed in Guinea-Conakry, inside a revolutionary country. And they, the party of Guinea of Cabral had at one point been thoroughly infiltrated and taken over by reactionaries. So the struggle inside of there had to be to reclaim the party, to run them reactionaries out of the party, and then reorganize the party to assume power through the normal, legitimate electoral process. And
Mm-hmm.
people really need to understand the significance of that, because coming out of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, the African revolutionaries were convinced that the only way to seize revolutionary power was through armed struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So we fought in Zimbabwe, we fought in Algeria, we fought in Namibia, we fought in Angola, we fought throughout the African continent in different places. We fought, we had a Mau Mau, we had the Algeria, we were engaged in an armed struggle in Guinea-Bissau. We was even coordinating between the different armed factions who were often fighting the same colonial power. So like all of the Portuguese colonies got their independence at the same time. So we were convinced, and most of my life in the movement, this was my understanding of what was going on, that we have to wage an armed struggle to get our land back.
Mm-hmm.
The first person to show us that that is not necessarily true was Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. And in fact, he showed it to us twice.
Yeah.
Because he tried to get in power through a coup d'etat, which failed, got him arrested. He had to get himself out of jail, reorganize his party to the extent of bringing together 26 different political factions inside, different formations inside of Venezuela to form the Venezuela Socialist, the PSUV, the People's Socialist Party of Venezuela. Took power through election. The reactionaries threw a coup d'etat and locked him up. And the masses of the people got up that next morning, walked down to the jail and said, send Hugo out here.
Donde está Chavez?
Donde está Chavez? Come on, Commandante, let's go. You got work to do. And they just took him out of jail and walked him right back into his office.
Yes, they did.
Without a fire, a shot. So they demonstrated not only can we seize power without war, physical military war, but we can maintain that power without a resort to arms. So this was a lesson that to the world that has now been taken up in Africa. because this is what Guinea-Bissau is doing. And they've committed themselves to this path, sometimes to my own frustration, because I'm tired of them pigs that they fighting against. I'll be like, y'all need to buckle up and go in there and get them folks, Luckily, they don't listen to me like that. I mean, they listen to me, but not like that. And they've decided that no, our people have suffered too much. Our people have lost too much in this warfare. And so now we're going to go through this constitutional method to achieve our aims and objectives. And as they move towards the constitutional process of regaining control, they've had people killed. They've had their headquarters invaded on more than one occasion. They've had the Supreme Court shut down. And right now they've shut down the People's National Assembly to keep them from going and doing what they were elected to do. The PAIGC was elected by an overwhelming absolute majority in the last election and are therefore responsible for forming the government. And that reactionary pig, Mbalo Sissoko, who's trying to maintain and hold on power by any means necessary, is doing everything he can to prevent the legitimate organization, it's called the PIA Terra Ranka Coalition, from assuming power in Guinea-Bissau. And this is something that is right now is going on. So we're calling on people, call the United Nations and tell them, open the National Assembly in Guinea-Bissau. Call or write the African Union and tell them, open the National Assembly in Guinea-Bissau. Now, I'm a revolutionary. I really don't, you know, Jackie, I really don't believe in lobbying as a form of revolutionary activity. Every time we bring it up, I give you all the story about, well, the only thing you're going to get out of that is some understanding.
Yes.
Ain't that my line? That's my line.
Like, Rafiki's not going to want to do this, but okay.
Well, it's so bad that I know you don't want to take me in there with you when you're lobbying, because you might not get through the door. I've been around a little while, but
him again.
Here you go. But the reality is that this is the proper approach. That in struggling for the people's freedom, you have an obligation to attempt every means available to you, short of armed struggle, to achieve the objectives that you set. Because it's only when the people are convinced that you have done everything you can do that they will willingly resort to arms. And so this is why it is correct what is happening in Guinea-Bissau, and this is why they have committed to this nonviolent constitutional approach to getting back in power. And we're supporting that. We're going to have a demonstration on the 26th at the African Union headquarters in Washington, D.C., and we're pressing them to do what they're set up to do, which is to protect the constitutional authority of the governments in power. Now, we know that the African Union, like the ECOWAS, and like the United States, United Nations, is filled up with a bunch of pigs. They don't care about Africa or African people.
Right.
But at the same time, the institutions that they are involved in can play a role. And if that role is nothing more than to prove to the people of Guinea-Bissau that we have tried everything else, then that is an important role.
Mhm.
So we want to exhaust this role and see how far we can get using these constitutional means before we decide it's necessary to take other means. So all of that adds up to the fact that we're in a different world.
Mhm.
These reactionary states in West Africa, they're scared to go into Niger. They all got
Mm.
military that don't like them. They all got the masses of the people in the street calling
Mhm.
for their heads. They all know what they have done to their own people. And they know that if they make a misstep at this moment in time, the momentum is towards the progressive and revolutionary kinds of activity. And that's the times we're in. So we're getting ready to see a new day, and I'm just happy for it.
Thank you so much, Rafiki, for coming on today and giving us this information. Thank you to Anonymous for your $10 pledge and Ibrahim for your $25 pledge. We did not meet our goal. We got $35 and I think probably a little more on Cash App, but that's all right. We're going to do this one more time with y'all next week. And I really appreciate you, everything that you have contributed, and folks who are watching on Black Power Media, folks who are listening on WPFW. Shout out to my Uncle Junie and Aunt Clara, who I know are listening right now. Thank y'all so much. Have a great weekend. Peace.
Peace. Thank you.
Stop that. Okay.